Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome, everyone, to the deep dive. Today, we're getting into something really foundational, what our material calls the Father's heart. And we're not just talking concepts here, are we? It's more about like an experience that can genuinely reshape how you see things, how you feel inside. Our sources today are packed with some really personal reflections and some cultural insights that honestly surprised me. So our mission really is to go beyond just piling up information. We want to process it, let it sink in, maybe even transform us a bit.
Yeah, and what's fascinating, is how our sources really zero in on this universal human thing. We collect knowledge,
Right.
right? But internalizing it, that's different. One source used this great phrase, ending up with a big head and a small heart, just full of facts, but
Not much change happening inside. Yeah, I get that.
exactly. And true transformation, it seems, involves a couple of things. First, you kind of have to bravely look at the old stories, the old narratives that shaped you,
The stuff you maybe took for granted.
right? And then the second part, which is just as crucial, is actively embracing new truths. Truths that can bring, well, a lot of freedom.
Yeah.
This dive today is really about exploring that journey.
Absolutely. And it's not just thinking about it, is it? The sources really stress active engagement. Like,
Yeah.
you have to do something. One really practical thing they suggest is this reflective journaling exercise. It tackles that feeling sometimes, that too much teaching does not make sense unless you actually process it.
Uh-huh. It needs to land somewhere.
Exactly. So this method, it uses two columns. Simple idea. One side is for what the sources call lies, basically. Any negative words, phrases, thoughts, stuff spoken to you, or even the negative things you tell yourself.
Self-condemnation, too.
Yeah, all of it. Every negative thing, big or small, get it down. And they encourage you to, feel free to connect it with your emotions as you write.
Which is so important. Why is facing these lies so vital, though?
Mm.
Our material kind of links it back to this idea of remembering being key to revelation, to healing.
Yeah.
Because often these things, these negative inputs, they're so deep we don't even see them anymore. They just feel true.
Yeah, like the source said, sometimes the lie becomes our truth. It just
Yeah.
blends in.
Precisely. So bringing them out, writing them down, it helps you see their actual impact. And then after you've kind of poured all that out, there's this really symbolic step.
Yeah.
You take that page, the one with all the lies written on it,
Yeah.
and you actually tear it out.
Wow.
Yeah, and place it into a communal basket or something similar. It signifies, a real release, letting go. It's
Yeah.
more than just thinking about it. It's an action, emotional freedom.
That's powerful. And it's stress. This is a private thing, right? Nobody's checking your notes. Write in whatever language feels most natural, Korean, English, Fijian, whatever. Just let it out. Connect with how those words actually felt. And that second column, that's for later, for what the sources call God's truth about you. But first, you got to face the lies.
And it's definitely not a race. Our sources suggest taking your time with this, really reflecting. The aim is to eventually see this stark contrast, right, between those lies that shaped you and the liberating truths about who you really are from the Father's perspective. When you see them side by side, that's when you start to grasp the power of the lies and the freedom in the truth. That's where the change starts.
Okay, so moving from writing to something more visual, this is where it gets really interesting. Our sources use this amazing metaphor. Picture a palm frond, just a simple palm frond. And the source says, this is you.
Okay.
Now imagine someone, like an artisan, skillfully taking that frond and weaving it into a basket. And this, the sources explain, is like how God works in our lives, weaving something new, maybe working on one side of your heart, then the different side, kind of intertwining them. It's this ongoing process.
That's a beautiful image.
Yeah.
And connecting that to the bigger picture, our sources are really honest here. This weaving, while the end result is beautiful, useful, the process itself, it can often involve, well, painful stages. Things like pulling everything in, maybe even ripping away bits that don't fit anymore or aren't healthy.
Yeah, transformation isn't always smooth sailing.
Not at all. And there's this detail about needing the right tool. Sometimes, the sources say, trying to force change with the wrong approach, well, the tool will break in this process. There was this demonstration mentioned where they needed a specific kitchen knife to cut through the really tough, strong core of the material. It shows that not just any method works for deep change.
So you need the right approach, the right tool for the job, essentially.
Exactly. And God's work, this weaving, it's continuous. It's not finished, our sources emphasize, until that beautiful basket, a whole, complete, useful person is formed. So the encouragement is really clear. Do not stop the process. even when it's tough.
Yeah.
Because this weaving is what allows us to truly become, as the sources put it, created in the image of God.
That really leads into another huge point our sources tackle, culture. How the culture we grow up in just profoundly shapes how we see everything. I can definitely relate to this from my own Fijian background. It creates real cultural shocks sometimes. I remember my first time in New Zealand, friends invited me for dinner. Now, in Fiji, if you invite someone, you pay. That's just how it is.
Right, that's the expectation.
Totally. So we get there, everyone orders, and then everyone pulls out their wallets to pay for their own meal. I was floored, so embarrassed. I actually lied. I said, oh, I already ate because I had no money, assuming they were paying.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a classic cultural clash, isn't it?
Yeah.
These norms are so deep we don't even think about them until they collide with something different.
Exactly. And it didn't stop there. The refrigerator, in our Fijian homes, it's like whatever is in the refrigerator belongs to everyone. Communal property. So when I moved into a shared house in NZ, I just see food in the fridge and eat it. I genuinely had no conviction, as the source might say, because in my mind, mine is yours, yours is mine.
No concept of individual ownership in that context.
None. The idea of asking permission, like, hey, can I use your knife? It felt weird. Why would I ask? It's our knife in our house. Even saying my parents' house feels a bit off in that traditional Fijian sense. It's just my house because my parents belong to me. We're all one unit. There isn't that sharp separation.
And what's fascinating, as our sources point out, is how all human cultures, even the really good supportive ones, are ultimately, well, limited. And they change, don't they? You even see it now within families. Like you mentioned, kids having their own stuff you have to ask permission for.
Yeah.
That's a shift.
Yeah, definitely.
And this contrasts so sharply with what the material describes as the father's culture, which is described as unchanging, as beyond our human limits. And here's the kicker. Sometimes even good cultural things like, say, really specific church rules on how to do things, maybe the exact steps in a Methodist church to become a preacher, or even vital religious laws like the law given to Israel. Paradoxically, these good things can become stumbling blocks. They can unintentionally get in the way of a deeper, more personal knowing of the Father.
Wow, that's a challenging thought. Good things stopping you.
Yeah. As one source puts it quite directly, sometimes the good things stop you from experiencing the Father. Not because they're bad, but because we might hold on to the structure instead of the relationship it points to. There's this analogy used, like a Maori facial tattoo, the moko. It's this intricate image, right, representing ancestry at the present, the future identity. And similarly, the Father's image, his culture, it encompasses everything God of yesterday, today, and forever. It's not stuck in time or limited by our structures.
So what are the core elements of this father's culture then, according to the sources?
Well, they break it down into a few key things. First, belief. Foundational belief that he loves you unconditionally no matter what. Second, writes, understanding your inherent identity. You're a son or daughter of the living God. You belong here, period. Third, food. Not physical food, but heavenly food. Described as manna, the word of the Lord, from the Father in Jesus. Spiritual nourishment that sustains you. And fourth, crucially, practice. This isn't just inward, it's outward. The practice is love your neighbor as you love yourself. Active, express love, rooted in that identity and nourishment.
Okay, so that practice part, let's unpack that a bit more. Moving from just receiving this love and identity to actively living it and giving it. After someone's worked through the lies and started internalizing the truth about you from the Father's view, what's next? Our sources suggest this affirmation exercise. You actually get someone you trust, a friend, spouse, whoever, to read that page of truth about you back to you.
Okay, so you hear it spoken over you.
Exactly. And the goal, the sources stress, is pure affirmation, just receiving it. Because let's be honest, we sometimes lack to affirm each other in our day-to-day lives, right? This exercise is about intentionally starting a new culture, one of building each other up, speaking life.
And connecting that to the bigger picture, our sources really highlight this beautiful reciprocity. By giving, you are also receiving. It's not one or the other, they're entwined. Speaking these truths in faith, the sources emphasize, is powerful. Words have creative force. Remember, he spoke, life came. We're meant to use words to build up, not tear down.
Yeah, creating that culture of affirmation.
Definitely.
And building right on that giving principle, there's this special gift challenge proposed in the material. For the next day, the idea is to pray about what is important in your heart, figure out what object or action shows that, and then decide who you want to give it to.
Yes, something genuinely meaningful to you. Something that represents a real giving from the heart. The examples given were things like your laptop, maybe $100, or a painting.
Oh.
They did jokingly add Please don't give your husband or your wife away.
Uh-huh. Right, important clarification.
But the point is, it's about a sacrifice, something precious.
Yeah.
This challenge connects right back to what our sources see as a foundational practice, listening to God and do it.
Hmm.
It's embodying that giving nature of the Father's heart, because ultimately, his heart is about giving. I love that story in the material about the daughter praying for a specific bag.
Oh, yeah, the details.
Exactly, not just a bag, but the exact color of the bag.
Mm-hmm.
And then someone, prompted by God, gave her precisely that bag. It just shows, as the source said, the Father does not only know the bag, but know the details of the bag. He cares about the specifics of your heart's desires.
That's incredible. What amazing insights and really practical, powerful exercises we've covered. It feels like these aren't just theories, but invitations, right? To experience something deeper. We've actually heard from some listeners who've engaged with these ideas, and the impact is pretty profound. How are you feeling listening to all this? What's standing out, or what questions are maybe bubbling up for you?
It really is encouraging, isn't it, to hear how these internal shifts could be so personal and truly transformative.
Yeah. We had one listener share something really vulnerable about childhood trauma. It was quite moving. They talked about witnessing their parents having these fierce fights and being sent to their room, just shaking, trying to comfort their little sister, and realizing now how much of a bad influence and big impact that had. Their question was really twofold. Do my sister and I need to forgive our parents for this indirect harm? And also, how do you even do that? How to forgive?
Hmm. That is deeply painful. And the sources absolutely validate that pain. The impact of indirect harm, especially on a child, is incredibly real. Regarding forgiveness, the material strongly emphasizes that it's primarily for your healing, your freedom. It's not about saying what happened was okay or condoning the actions. It's really about releasing the grip that past event has on you today, freeing yourself from its shadow. And this connects right back to that process we discussed, identifying the lies those experiences might have planted and replacing them with the truth about your worth, your safety, your identity in the Father's eyes. It's definitely a journey, not a switch you flip. But the sources assure us the Father's heart offers profound healing for wounds like these, guiding you through it.
That's helpful. Then there was another share, more of an aha moment. A participant said that after processing these ideas, their whole perspective on their son shifted. They started seeing him not just as my son who resembles me, but as God's son created in God's image. And that completely changed their mindset and how they interact with him.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's a perfect illustration of what happens when you start seeing through the Father's perspective, as the sources describe it. It changes everything about how you relate. It's a sign of that new culture taking root.
Yeah. And one more interesting one, someone shared a dream they had. They dreamt of a black, dirty net, and they weren't sure if it was loosened or tied up. But then connecting it to that basket weaving metaphor we talked about, they had this realization that, like, God is making me, even if the process feels messy or unclear, like that dirty net.
That's a powerful connection. Dreams can be so insightful. Our sources often talk about how God works in ways we don't always understand. That dirty net, you could see it as symbolizing maybe old patterns, tangled hurts, negative stuff that God, in that weaving process, is pulling in, maybe even ripping away, like the sources described. Might look messy, like a dirty net, while it's happening, but it's all part of creating something new and beautiful. It's totally okay to feel like you don't fully get it while you're in the middle of it. Trusting the weaver is key.
Trusting the weaver. I like that. Okay, one last situation shared was a bit of a challenge that came up during that affirmation exercise. A listener shared that her husband got very angry. She was reading his truth letter back to him as suggested, but she also mentioned that his handwriting was not clear. And because of that, my mind was not at ease trying to read it. He felt like she was criticizing, pointing it out, instead of just receiving and affirming.
Ah, yes. This brings up a really important point about the intention and focus of that exercise, which our sources are clear about. The core purpose is purely about receiving the affirmation, hearing those truths spoken over you, almost as if the Father himself were speaking them. No critique, no analysis, just receiving. His reaction, that feeling of being criticized instead of affirmed, actually highlights exactly why this new culture of affirmation is so needed. Our default as humans can often be, like the source said, being so good to tell people what they did wrong, even subtly.
Even when we don't mean to.
Exactly. So this practice is about intentionally shifting away from that, especially in moments of vulnerability like sharing your truth letter. It's about learning to purely build each other up, speak life, and hold back the critique for another time if it's even needed at all.
Makes sense. Wow, what a journey we've been on today, really digging into this. From facing those inner lies, understanding that weaving process, seeing how culture shapes us, and then moving into actively practicing giving an affirmation. It's a lot. But it all seems to point back to that core idea from the sources. Any giving has to come from a place of joy,
Right.
right?
Absolutely. The Father's heart, as revealed in our material, it is about giving. Deeply, sacrificially. He gave his son the ultimate gift because he wanted you to receive life, relationship. The sources are clear. God gives good gifts, the most precious gifts, not, a basket full of snakes.
Mm.
And that challenge, giving that special gift, it's just a small way to practice that same principle, listening to God and doing it, participating in that culture of giving.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive, maybe here's a thought to mull over, drawing straight from our sources. What good thing in your own life, maybe a cultural norm, a religious practice, a personal habit, what seemingly good thing might unknowingly be acting as a stumbling block right now, something that's hindering you from experiencing the Father's love even more deeply? Something to reflect on. We really encourage you to continue your own deep dive, maybe through prayer, journaling, or just looking for ways to actively live out this Father's culture of love and generosity each day. Thanks so much for joining us today.